The Galactic Council had fought dozens of expansion wars. Dozens of species had crumbled under the sheer size of its armada, folded into the bureaucracy, or disappeared altogether. When humans first entered the interstellar arena, they were barely noted. One of the inner delegates dismissed them as aggressive mammals with short tempers and shorter lifespans. Another called them curious primitives, inventive but ultimately disorganized. On paper, humanity was a patchwork of scattered colonies, divided governments, and inconsistent technologies. The Council had absorbed far more advanced civilizations with far less effort. So, when the directive was passed to demand Earth's submission, it wasn't debated, it was assumed. Humanity's response, however, wasn't what the Council anticipated. It wasn't war. It wasn't surrender. It was silence. No official statement. No diplomatic resistance. No threats. Just a long, uncomfortable quiet. For a week, Earth sent no transmissions. Galactic surveillance picked up no unusual fleet movement, no energy spikes, not even civil unrest. Colonies across human territory fell out of sync with normal communication relays. The Council's analysts theorized internal collapse. Perhaps their fractured societies were finally unraveling under the weight of inevitable defeat. Some argued Earth might already be negotiating surrender privately with outer Council members. The Council misread everything. To them, silence meant fear. They believed humans were stalling, scrambling to piece together a unified command, perhaps begging for scraps behind the scenes. The truth was far more calculated. While Council analysts debated projections, Earth's silence was a smokescreen, a deliberate veil pulled tight over movement, preparation, and mobilization. A game of delay, bait, and blindness. Publicly, the Council released a final offer to Earth: submit all planetary resources, turn over military assets, and agree to assimilation. In return, Earth would be spared obliteration. A full cycle was granted for humanity to comply. The announcement was followed by broadcasts across every human system. Towering holograms showed Council ships in formation. Warnings echoed in languages half-translated, declaring unity through compliance and destruction through defiance. They expected panic, riots, desperate transmissions. Earth gave them none. Within the Grand Chamber, Council speakers mocked Earth's supposed cowardice. One delegate noted with smug amusement that even the Arxani, known for their subterranean resilience, had surrendered faster. Another questioned why humans hadn't at least mounted symbolic resistance. Behind the jokes, though, was something colder, a hunger to make an example of Earth, to remind every fringe world what disobedience cost. The war machine had already been primed. Troop carriers were loaded. The first wave of dreadnoughts had left orbit weeks ago. Earth's silence wasn't buying time. It was buying them the perfect target. Still, a few voices within the Council hesitated. Not out of sympathy, but concern. A minor diplomat from the Yone Collective noted anomalies, strange readings from deep human space, irregular warp signatures, system-level shutdowns that didn't fit known panic behavior. His concerns were waved off as irrelevant. The data was incomplete, and the mission was already underway. Meanwhile, on Earth, there was no panic. There were no riots. Instead, silence continued. But beneath that quiet, something else stirred, an old instinct wrapped in discipline, tempered by centuries of war, shaped by survival on a death world. While the Council mocked and maneuvered, humanity listened. Not to them, but to each other. Across oceans and orbits, behind encrypted firewalls and invisible networks, leaders spoke in untraceable pulses, not headlines. Corporations, Black Ops divisions, rogue AI clusters, Mars engineers, Europa's deep-sea builders, they all waited for the same signal. And when it came, it wasn't dramatic. It was a single phrase embedded in a geological date feed. Asset Dawn Protocol confirmed. Humanity didn't react like a cornered species. It reacted like a unified organism. Silent. Efficient. Certain. But the Council didn't see this. They only saw what they believed, that Earth was terrified, broken, waiting to be devoured. Every time they looked at humanity, they saw themselves at the top of a hierarchy. A civilization that believed submission was universal and war was an equation. What they didn't see, what they couldn't measure, was what silence really meant when it came from Earth. Because humans don't speak when they prepare. They don't scream when they commit. They wait. They calculate. And when they act, it's already too late for anyone else to stop them. The countdown ended. The cycle passed. The deadline for Earth's surrender expired. Still, no word came. But somewhere in Council territory, on the edge of a fringe system, a single outpost flickered out of existence. No explosion. No alarm. Just vanished. A surveillance drone picked up a whisper of distortion, like space itself folded. Then nothing. The Council noticed. But by then, noticing didn't matter. Let me know if you'd like to move to Section 2 Script F, or want a narrator-ready voiceover version F. The silence that unnerved the Galactic Council was not an action, it was design. While alien analysts argued over Earth's supposed disarray, the humans had already transitioned into the second phase. Civilian channels remained quiet, major cities functioned normally, and no declarations emerged. But deep beneath the surface, under layers of hardened bunkers, artificial moons, and long-forgotten asteroid belts, the machinery of response roared silently to life. The first movements came from black sites that had been decommissioned on paper decades ago. Hidden laboratories, military think tanks buried beneath permafrost, experimental shipyards once considered unviable, all of them reignited under code names only a few ever knew. Entire continents reallocated power silently, rerouting from civilian grids into deep core reactors that hadn't activated in generations. Mars shifted orbital arrays with minute precision, not for communication, but targeting. The perception of human chaos had been earned. Wars, politics, internal fractures, corporate rivalries, true and visible. But beneath that noise was a contingency, a shared axiom never spoken aloud: Earth doesn't lose wars of extinction. Survival was not up for debate. The divisions on the surface were real, but they never extended into annihilation protocol. And this, humans had prepared for, not as a reaction, but as a long-term inevitability. Covert AI clusters, disconnected from EarthNet and considered rogue, were brought back online under the directive override. These weren't assistants. They were strategic intelligences trained on centuries of asymmetric warfare. They mapped enemy supply lines within hours. Identified vulnerabilities the Council hadn't noticed in years. Their simulations didn't predict if the Council would attack. They calculated how far they'd get before collapsing under their own arrogance. On Europa, oceanic cities initiated zero-visibility protocols, melting their own infrastructure into seabed camouflage. Titan colonies buried themselves in methane storms and generated decoys. The belt's outer settlements ceased all signal traffic, vanishing from maps. Council observers mistook this for abandonment. In truth, it was repositioning. Orbital habitats redirected kinetic arrays away from the sun and toward the void. Humanity's fleet, such as it appeared on galactic registers, was deceptively small. But that data was curated. In reality, dozens of unlisted shipyards, some hidden behind lunar shadows, others in gravitational blind zones, had been constructing vessels never meant to be seen. These weren't dreadnoughts for show or carriers built to parade power. They were designed for disruption, silence, and precision. Hulls forged from vacuum-reflective alloys, weapons engineered not just to destroy, but to disable systems mid-jump, rendering enemy ships inert before they knew they were targeted. On Earth, civilian life continued undisturbed. Children attended schools. Flights took off. Markets opened. But across certain sectors, key individuals were extracted: scientists, strategists, engineers, all quietly moved to deep shelters. Families weren't told. No goodbyes. Just vanishing routines. Those who remained didn't panic. They didn't need to. Humanity had evolved with existential threats. Global warming, nuclear standoffs, viral outbreaks, all tests of resilience. Galactic invasion was only the next iteration. Meanwhile, humanity's command structure condensed. Not in hierarchy, but in intent. The old military branches, the Orbital Guard, the Planetary Command, the Off-World Defense Authority, folded under a singular directive force with no name, no emblem. Their orders were locked, distributed across quantum keys accessible only by protocol triggers. There was no central authority. Leadership was modular, mobile, and deliberately decentralized. No decapitation strike could stop it. The corporate empires, usually at odds with global interests, were already on board. Not because of patriotism, but math. Council domination would erase intellectual property, revenue streams, and planetary autonomy. That made collaboration not just logical, it was profitable. Megacorp fleets, once private, now formed the backbone of auxiliary logistics. They carried munitions, food, personnel. Their ships weren't flagged military, but they didn't need to be. They were armored haulers with pulse cannons and warp cloaks. From the Council's distant perspective, nothing changed. No media outcry. No mass mobilization. No heroic declarations. But their sensors failed to detect the disappearance of a dozen surveillance satellites. They missed the decoy pulses bouncing off mining colonies that no longer existed. They didn't question why trade ships adjusted course ever so slightly, following paths that put them within striking distance of known relay stations. The final stage of preparation wasn't announced. It simply activated. A relay beacon near Alpha Mera blinked out. No explosion. No energy spike. Just gone. The Council still hadn't seen a single human ship in open space. And yet, the Board of Contingency, the last resort human leadership cell never listed on any registry, issued its first statement to internal command channels, *. Operational silence confirmed. All assets primed. Awaiting incursion trigger. *. There would be no warning. No plea. No second signal. Earth had already moved from survival to strategy. Let me know if you're ready for the Section 3 script, F, or want a tactical breakdown of Earth Fleet Tech F. It began as a ripple. A data relay station near the outer spiral arm failed to report. The Galactic Council logged it as a systems glitch. Moments later, a trade convoy disappeared mid-jump. No distress signal. No debris. Just void. For a civilization accustomed to order and predictability, this was an anomaly. To humanity, it was a calculated opening move. Within 2 cycles, the anomalies compounded. A fuel station in the Nairos corridor sent an emergency ping before going dark. Seconds after, a surveillance probe orbiting the star Alpha 3 recorded a sudden drop in gravitational consistency, then static. The Council's intelligence arm began cross-checking failures but dismissed them as unconnected. Piracy, mechanical failure, even natural space distortions were blamed. No one mentioned Earth. No one imagined precision this sharp could originate from a species they had considered backward. By the time they did, 3 military outposts had vanished. The first confirmed strike came during a routine patrol. A Council cruiser, the Veilcar, escorted by 2 interceptors, was navigating Sector A94 when it picked up a shadow on its forward sensors. The object was unregistered. No energy signature. No transponder. Moments later, the ship's core systems collapsed. Hull sensors failed. Weapons disabled. Seconds later, the cruiser split in 2, clean and quiet, without a single energy spike. The interceptors fired at nothing, panicked, then went silent themselves. No weapons returned fire. There was no visible attacker. Only aftermath? Within a day, Council Fleet Command admitted an escalated security event. By then, 15 separate strategic nodes had been neutralized. Communications posts, command hubs, outer system wormhole monitors, all eliminated with clinical precision. Still, no declaration from Earth. No captured vessels. No prisoners. Just silence. The fear wasn't just the losses. It was the style. These were not brute force attacks. They were surgical extractions. Someone knew where the Council would be vulnerable. Not obvious targets, but pressure points that took years to understand. Locations never marked on public registries. That's when the realization began to set in. Humans had been studying them for a long time. Not as victims. As hunters. Fleet Command dispatched a battle group to intercept whatever was striking in the Skorun stretch. 12 ships. Heavy armament. Combat-tested crews. All vanished. No logs, no escape pods, no final broadcasts. An hour after their disappearance, a message was received. Not a threat, just 4 words, spoken in perfect Galactic standard, asterisk. This was not retaliation. Asterisk. Panic began to creep beneath the Council's polished facade. Civilian colonies started transmitting encrypted requests for evacuation protocol. Border alliances frayed. Minor factions withdrew their support. The illusion of invincibility was breaking. The humans hadn't just struck, they had rewired fear. They didn't posture. They didn't broadcast. And they didn't miss. New protocols were initiated. Patrols doubled. Civilian travel restricted. AI defense programs updated. Still, it wasn't enough. Earth's forces never attacked where expected. Instead, they disrupted. Mining convoys would launch, then lose all navigation data mid-flight. Repair drones malfunctioned en masse. Warp lanes collapsed just long enough to strand ships at key intersections. The entire system was being turned inside out. Not with force, but with control. Council strategists tried to model human behavior. They failed. Every simulation was based on alien military doctrine, predictable, hierarchical, symbolic. Humanity was none of those things. They didn't send fleets to announce power. They didn't use overwhelming numbers. They moved like a shadow with infinite hands, unseen until the cut was already made. And still, no official demand came. No ultimatums. No propaganda. Just cold, unstoppable erosion. The term, Phantom War, began circulating within the lower ranks. Officers refused to fly outer routes. Fleet cadets resigned before deployment. Colonies initiated their own defense drills without Council permission. Earth's silence was no longer seen as weakness. It had become a storm waiting behind every black patch of space. Then, something shifted. A high-ranking counselor, en route to a summit on Jelker Prime, watched helplessly as her escort vessel was disarmed mid-flight by an unknown gravity field. Her ship wasn't destroyed. It was boarded. Her crew paralyzed. The only message recorded in the aftermath was 5 words, asterisk. We are still arriving. Asterisk. The Council, once supremely confident, now faced an invisible opponent whose reach was expanding faster than their fleets could adjust. Earth had not responded to their threat. It had dissected it. What the Council still failed to grasp was this: humans were not reacting. They were executing a plan that had been set in motion long before the Council ever issued its ultimatum. One move at a time. And every piece removed from the board brought them closer to the center. Let me know when you're ready for the Section 4 script, F, or Want A, Fleet Encounter Visual Breakdown, F. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session, their chambers once a symbol of untouchable authority now shadowed by unease. The losses could no longer be denied, and the threat could no longer be ignored. Data projected across the hall showed dozens of strategic locations erased from existence, fleets dismantled without confrontation, entire supply chains rendered useless. No pattern fit. No enemy identified. Earth remained officially silent, yet its absence from the diplomatic stage now carried the weight of entire fleets. Panic filtered through the bureaucracy. The upper echelons maintained the facade of control, issuing containment plans and defense upgrades. But internal reports painted a different picture. Communications lagged, internal systems registered silent intrusions, and encrypted transmissions began failing without trace. Earth wasn't simply winning a war. It was redefining the battlefield. And the Council's institutions, built for posturing and reaction, were collapsing under precision they couldn't predict. Delegates scrambled to assign blame. Accusations flew between military and intelligence factions. Protocols were rewritten daily. Yet nothing slowed the unraveling. Human forces never declared presence, never engaged in extended battles. They struck with mathematical clarity, always 2 moves ahead, always knowing when to vanish. The Council believed in deterrence through spectacle. Earth dismantled that belief without speaking a single threat aloud. Civil unrest began to ripple through peripheral systems. Colonies with strong Council ties initiated covert talks with human intermediaries, not to resist, but to align. Entire science guilds defected without firing a shot, seduced not by ideology but by survival. Earth's influence moved like a virus, silent, effective, embedded. And with every shift, Council territory grew smaller, not in space, but in control. Council war strategists proposed direct invasion of the Sol system. Desperation disguised as confidence. Massive fleets were mobilized. Entire planetary garrisons reassigned. Resources were funneled toward a single goal: demonstrate overwhelming force at Earth's doorstep. Intelligence officers questioned the feasibility. No one listened. The campaign was greenlit. The fleet never reached its target. 3 days into transit, the forward carriers encountered a spatial anomaly, uncharted, fluid, and artificially induced. Gravitational signatures fluctuated too quickly for recalibration. Navigation collapsed. Emergency protocols activated. Then silence. The fleet didn't explode. It didn't scatter. It simply ceased transmission. Only one broadcast survived, recovered from a corrupted sensor log, a brief flash of Earth's moon, its surface embedded with unnatural patterns pulsing across visible spectrums. A signal buried in the static translated to *. We are not where you think. *. The message wasn't just a taunt. It was a correction. Earth was never the target. It was the illusion. The true network spanned further, deeper. The humans had expanded without announcement, built without surveillance, maneuvered without detection. What the Council believed was a frontier species had become a hidden empire. With each failed counter, Council morale fractured further. Elite units requested reassignment to internal worlds. Border defense platforms went dark preemptively, assuming themselves already compromised. Entire planetary governors went silent, unwilling to be known as the next on Earth's invisible list. The myth of the human fleet had become more potent than any physical force. No one had seen it. No ship had returned with proof. Yet its impact was undeniable. The shift became cultural. Council military academies removed case studies on Terran warfare. Too unpredictable, they said. Civilian broadcast networks banned human-related content, citing psychological instability. But suppression only fed the fear. Rumors spread through the lower classes, of Earth as a species that never needed to conquer planets. They conquered decisions. With every delay, every redirected policy, humanity's influence deepened. A turning point came when a Council encryption core, believed impervious, was cracked open. It didn't destroy the system. It rewrote it. Dozens of secure archives were not deleted but restructured, replacing protocols with quiet instructions guiding personnel to surrender specific protocols. No one knew how long the code had been present, or how deep it ran. Internal resistance began forming, not against humans, but against the Council itself. Soldiers refused deployment. Officers leaked operation plans. Dissent became common. Not because they wanted to fight, but because they realized Earth wasn't asking for war, it was removing the option altogether. The humans didn't demand surrender. They engineered inevitability. And in the core of Council space, a relay station cracked open from within. A lone message was transmitted to every registered channel, using Council encryption and cadence. Just 7 words, *. We never needed to outnumber you. *. The system froze. Not because of technical failure, but because every receiver understood, the war was already decided, and Earth had chosen not to end it yet. Let me know if you're ready for the final section script, F, or wanton, epilogue-style summary F. In the wake of silence, the Galactic Council no longer sought victory, only understanding. Their vast archives held records of thousands of conflicts, from planetary sieges to interstellar blockades, but nothing aligned with what they now faced. Earth had redefined confrontation without firing fleets in formation or launching planetside invasions. The humans had done something far more dangerous. They had proved a willingness to win without ever announcing they were playing. Entire quadrants remained technically under Council control, yet orders failed to execute. Resources didn't arrive. Shipyards stayed idle. AI logistics subroutines encountered errors that never resolved. It was a paralysis born from precision. The systems hadn't collapsed, they had been bypassed. Human interference was never confirmed. It didn't need to be. By then, everyone knew the pattern. Earth's presence became a shadow across every decision. Trade deals stalled because buyers feared unseen repercussions. Military movements slowed, unsure if an invisible perimeter would be crossed. Even diplomatic discussions were held with caution, as if humans might be listening, and worse, already acting. The galaxy hadn't fallen into chaos. It had entered a new order. Quiet, tense, and fully shaped by the threat of consequence. Then, a transmission arrived. Not a broadcast. Not a demand. It came directly to the personal communication channel of each council elder, encrypted, verified, and unmistakably human in structure. It contained no threat, no demands, no ideology. Just a series of questions. Asterisk. Why did you assume we would break? Asterisk. Asterisk. What convinced you fear would work? Asterisk. Asterisk. How many civilizations have you undone with those same tools? Asterisk. Asterisk. What made you so certain we were like them? Asterisk. No one answered. There was no room for rebuttal. In the following weeks, Council-controlled factions began defecting openly. Outer colonies passed referendums to withdraw from centralized rule. Member species requested neutrality status. Former allies pleaded for trade pacts with Earth, disguised as cultural exchanges. Each decision happened independently, yet the rhythm was coordinated. Not by human imposition, but by an unspoken understanding. The future didn't belong to the strongest voice. It belonged to the one that could not be outmaneuvered. Earth did not fill the power vacuum. It left it empty. Not as a gesture of peace, but as a lesson. Systems that relied on fear to maintain structure now found that absence more terrifying than aggression. The Council had always believed power meant presence. Humanity had proven it meant influence. Academies rewrote their curricula. Military doctrines were purged of outdated assumptions. Diplomatic training now required courses in Terran strategy. There were no treaties signed. No ceremonies held. But a quiet rewrite swept across every level of galactic society. Earth had no flag to raise over conquered soil, because no soil had been touched. It had simply been changed. On Terra itself, life resumed without triumph. The civilian population never learned the extent of what had transpired. That was the point. There were no victory parades, no planetary broadcasts declaring supremacy. Humanity had acted not for conquest, but for survival engineered to its highest form. The species had encountered annihilation and responded with a mastery of indirect dominance. They had never sought to lead. They'd only refused to be erased. In the end, the Galactic Council was not defeated, it was dismantled from within, piece by piece, until the final structure stood empty, not broken, but irrelevant. Those who had once ruled now sought only stability under rules they had never written. Earth didn't govern them. It didn't need to. The message had already been delivered, not in words but through the absolute efficiency of outcome. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy recognized that war could be won without armies visible, without territories occupied, and without commands ever voiced. Earth had not destroyed a government. It had overwritten an assumption. And far beyond the rim, in distant sectors still untouched by human presence, a whisper began to circulate among younger species. Asterisk. The humans did not defeat the Council. They waited for it to expose its weakness, then they replaced its certainty with doubt. Asterisk. That became Earth's legacy. Not the war it won, but the future it shaped without asking for permission. Let me know if you'd like a title card script, F, or HFY style outro narration, F, to close your video.